So Greece putting its airports, highways, and state-owned companies on the auction block as the debt-stricken state looks to raise more than $70 billion by 2015. Now, some members of Congress say the U.S. ought to do the same to cut its own debt. Operations like the U.S. Postal Service losing billions of dollars this year alone. Should government privatize tangible assets like the post office, like Amtrak, like the national parks, all in order to cut the deficit? Well, let's bring in Christian Weller, senior fellow at American Progress, and Ford O'Connell, chairman of Civic Forum PAC. Chris Weller, welcome back. You know, it's not only selling off Amtrak, it's allowing private bidders to come in to run highways, to run railroads. Branson of Virgin Rails wants to do it. What do you think, Christian? Does that make sense?
Well, I think when we talk about the deficit, it doesn't make sense to talk about privatization. What is really driving the deficit over the next 10, 20, 30 years is low revenue and healthcare inflation. We need to really face the fact that we address these problems. The Amtrak, USPS, the Postal Service, and other things do not contribute massively to the deficit, and they're national key assets that we need to keep in place in order to keep the country functioning. And no private bidder wants to take over the services of the Postal Service or Amtrak in the form that they exist at this point. And I think that's something we need to face the fact that it doesn't contribute to the deficit. Privatization is not the solution. It will ultimately worsen service.
Ford, you know, we got to start somewhere. And when you look at a place like the post office, they're expected to lose $7 billion in the fiscal year ending in 2011. The 2012 budget proposes giving them $11 billion. This seems like a business that would be perfect to privatize. There's parts of it that work, like priority mail. You know, there are parts of it that are totally outdated. If you sold it to private equity, couldn't they go in and shape the thing up so it would be profitable again? I mean, you've got to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely, and one of the places to do that is to strip the post office of its RHB mandate. Because of the congressional mandate with regard to health care and future pensions, the post office is not profitable overall. And it's another example of several government entities where we're losing money, and the government should not be in the business of it, or at least it should be in a public-private partnership to make it at least break even.
I mean, well, let's talk about the post office. The post office is not an economic proposition. The idea to deliver information to all citizens at equal pay, not discriminatory costs, is key to our democracy. We need to deliver mail to remote areas in the country, and that's not profitable. And that is but part of a functioning system. Nobody really should think about privatizing the post office for economic reasons. It's really a part of our democracy, of our functioning democracy.
Dr. Weller, to compete in the global economy, we cannot continue to have our federal government be all things to all people. We're running a $15 trillion debt.
We're talking about a key part of democracy, that is equal access to information for all citizens. And that will cost some money. I mean, the alternative, like, it's not an issue of economics. When the post office delivers mail to the remote areas of North Dakota or northern Maine, that is part of a democracy. That will have to be subsidized by the profitable services.
There are more efficient
Nobody
ways
is really arguing that the post office, you can always do things more efficiently, but you have to face the fact that it is.
Dr. Weller, can you tell me with a straight face that the post office is efficient? It is not.
Well, I have no evidence that it's not. I mean, and you haven't presented any evidence that it is.
Putting in $6 billion in the hole to begin with.
The goal is to deliver information to all citizens at equal cost. You cannot discriminate against people who are living in remote areys. The same is true for Amtrak. For other things.
There are better ways to achieve that goal.
But like no country has really privatized the core function of the post office.
Christian, let me ask you though. Okay, is Amtrak vital to democracy? Are highways and ports run by the government vital to democracy? Or maybe by privatizing them or allowing private firms to bid it, we would help democracy. Have you thought about that?
Well, the part when it comes to these infrastructure measures is when you talk about privatization and you look around the world where countries have tried it, it will take enormous upfront costs to build up the infrastructure where private investors actually want to come in. Private investors don't want to buy Amtrak the way it is. They only want to buy the Northeast Corridor. And even that would cost $14 to $16 billion just to get it to high-speed rail, which is attractive for private investors. So the idea here that you can sell them off and make money right from the beginning is not borne out by the data.
They're going to give it a shot in Greece. We'll see how it works. If they find any bidders, if it's still the whole system still holds up. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming on for the debate. We appreciate it.
I just would say, you know, whatever your position on this, England, Europe, airports, highways, they've done a lot of this throughout Europe, and it's worked pretty darn well. I'll just say, whatever your view is for the U.S.